This is Greg Kelly. Donate now to Toys for Tots, which works year-round. Go to toysfortots.org. Toys for Tots supports children in need throughout the year with programs like the Toys for Tots Literacy Program. Established in 2008, it has provided over 63 million books to disadvantaged children. The Toys for Tots Literacy Program is committed to providing disadvantaged children with direct access to books and educational resources that enhance their ability to read and communicate effectively. Go to toysfortots.org.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Excuse me. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Yeah, my guy George is with the President of the United States today. My boy Alan's got a new book out. Could President Trump constitutionally serve a third term? My nonpartisan legal analysis. I want to get back to the book conversation at the end of this conversation. And I believe he's going to hand the president a copy of the book today. But I know Alan told you a couple of days ago, Justin, I got a lot to talk about. And when Alan Dershowitz says that, that's a blessing. That's a treat when he's all that fired up. So I know with Iran and of course, the press conference yesterday and all these amazing rescue missions, and in the background, Israel dealing with what they're dealing with. This is a perfect time for Alan Dershowitz, the great Alan Dershowitz, to be on this program. But before I even get to that, I want to do two quick legal stories. First of all, Alan, when a criminal leaves his house with 21 priors, 21, and uses his illegal gun to kill a cop, how can you look me in the face and tell me or the jury that he did not have intent? How can you do that?
You can't. That's absurd. I mean, that's the downside of trial by jury. Trial by jury is not intended to produce accurate results. It's intended to prevent the government from having too much power, and we pay a price for that. And the price is terrible, terrible verdicts by jurors sometimes who buy into, what they hear on CNN or what they read in the New York Times or what, they hear among their friends. Who knows what the jury will do, for example, with this Magnani guy who killed somebody in cold blood and has been made a hero. Who knows whether you get one or two jurors who will say, oh, no, what they did in healthcare was much worse. So, trial by jury is not a guarantee of accurate or even just outcomes.
Funny, you're the second person to say to me that Mangione was really happy to see that verdict. Where Stephanie Diller, who's a lovely lady, I met her about 6 weeks ago, just the sweetest, nicest young lady with a little boy. She had to suffer a loss. And I know Guy Rivera still, maybe not. Bodito points out very accurately that a lot of cop killers are back on the streets. Either way, no reason for that lovely young girl to suffer a loss in a courtroom. It was disgusting. Second one, this birthright citizenship that the Supreme Court listened to last week. It doesn't seem like President Trump is going to get a win on this one. Any opinion on that?
I think he will get an ultimate win. I think the Supreme Court will rule and should rule that Congress has the power to decide who comes within the jurisdiction of the United States. After all, the 14th Amendment doesn't say you're a citizen just because you were born here. You have to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. For example, if you have somebody who just passes through and has a baby here and then the baby never comes back to the United States, they were born here, but they were not subject to the jurisdiction. So Congress can give the president a win even if the Supreme Court doesn't give him that win. And I think Congress should start working on that right now. Look, birthright citizenship is the dumbest thing in the Constitution. We're the only country virtually in the Western world that says the accident of where you were born determines whether you're a citizen or not. That's not the way it should be, but it's in the Constitution. Like some other dumb things are in the Constitution. For example, you can bring a civil lawsuit in federal court if it's worth $20 or more. $20, 1793 value is now, tens of thousands of dollars.
Right.
But the Constitution was written in stupid terms, and birthright citizenship is dumb. It shouldn't have said that at all. It should have said, You have to be subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. You have to be allegiance to the United States, and you become a citizen. Like my grandmother became a citizen. She swore, she went, my grandmother every July 4th would take us to the Statue of Liberty and make us swear oath to the Constitution, what a great country this is. That's how you become a citizen, showing your allegiance to the country, not being accidentally born here.
One more, then we'll get to Iran and the conflict.
Sure.
And that is, I've become really friendly, Alan, with Harmeet Dillon. In fact, the night that President Trump called me on stage at the White House, the third night of Hanukkah, she was on my left side and you were on my right side for a short amount of time. I really like her. She's the assistant to the, obviously, the AG, which is now, at least for a short time, Todd Blanche, since Bondi was fired. But she runs the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ, and she doesn't like Mamdani even a little bit. She hates him, in fact, like I do. She really does.
Good, me too.
Yeah, so do you, right. And he's got this new racial equity plan, this nonsense where he's going to bend over backwards to make sure that black people and Latino people are taken care of, which on the surface I'm okay with. Why not? But it turns out it does look a little fishy, maybe even a little racist, to the point where Harmeet Dillon actually tweeted yesterday, smells fishy, maybe even illegal. I will review. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, you cannot make decisions in the government based on race, whether they're positive or negative decisions. You just cannot do that. Race alone can never be a factor in deciding governmental policy because, you start with, oh, sure, it's absolutely true that blacks were treated unfairly. So were Jews. So were Italian Americans. So were Irish Americans. I mean, there's hardly a group. I mean, if you're going to take Mamdani to his logical conclusion, you get WASPs have to be discriminated against because they got all the advantages over time. Everybody else gets heads up and a greater advantage. You can't run a government that way. Everybody is equal now and should be treated equally now. Affirmative action has failed when it's based on race. Look, when it's based on accomplishments, when you have a person who has overcome tremendous difficulties individually, yeah, you give them some points for that. But just because a person was born black, son of a federal judge, son of a hedge fund person, went to the best schools in the world, no, they don't deserve any leg up on that just because they happen to have a different color skin than we do. So we have to get rid of all that.
Agreed. So there are people in this government, people like, and I think he's a clown, I'm sorry, Chris Van Hollen in Maryland and other Democrats, and even some Republicans like Thomas Massie or Rand Paul, who actually are saying what President Trump is doing right now in Iran with this big night about to come our way is nothing short of a war crime. Is there any credence to that?
None. Zero. Every single war that has been fought since the beginning of time, one side and the other side tried to destroy the industrial base, the economic base. That was the whole purpose of our bombing in the Second World War, both in Japan and in Germany. And the United States didn't win the Second World War by committing war crimes. That's number one. Number two, nobody mentions that Iran commits war crimes every single day by bombing civilian targets, killing people, a family named Dershowitz recently in Haifa, in their home. And when you are the victim of this kind of attack, you can retaliate in kind. They determine the rules of engagement. But if they destroy your oil facilities and your manufacturing facilities, you are entitled to retaliate by destroying theirs. So there is no basis at all. And let's remember what international law is. I think it was Jeremy Bentham, the great philosopher, who said it was hypocrisy on stilts. Who makes international law? A bunch of academics from Harvard and Yale Law School sitting around in their ivory towers with no experience, nothing, no background, and they say, well, this should be legal, this should be illegal. It's interesting, just to transition to my book for 1 second, there's a cartoon in the back cover of my book. And the cartoon has one of the founders of the Constitution saying to the other, just for fun, let's make what isn't constitutional kind of wishy-washy. And, of course, that's what they did with the 22nd Amendment, but that's also what they're doing with war crimes. It's wishy-washy. It's a war crime if the United States does it, but it's not a war crime if Iran does it. It's not a war crime if America's enemies do it. No, you can't fight an asymmetrical legal war that way. Whatever one side does, the other side is entitled to do that. We won't do it. We won't bomb houses or schools deliberately. You know, CNN still can't get off the fact that by a mistake in the first days of the war, apparently a school was bombed. Mistakes happen during war, but war crimes require intent. And I don't think any rational person will tell you that the United States intended to kill children in a school in Iran on the first day of the war. Of course that was an accident, collateral damage. That happens during war.
This is Roger Stone for American Sovereign Bullion. Since 2020, the U.S. dollar has lost over 20% of its purchasing power. Meanwhile, gold continues to rise. Call 844-272-2428 or go to asbgold.com now to get your free gold and silver guide and learn how to protect your wealth with physical gold and silver delivered to your door or held in a gold IRA today. So go to asbgold.com now. Don't wait for the markets to drop. That's asbgold.com.